Today we are doing an interview with Gautam ji, who is very kindly, he's come all the way from Bombay. And Gautam has been my spiritual teacher and guide since more than about 8 years now. And Gautam comes from the Advaitic tradition and the lineage of Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. And Gautam's teacher was Ramesh Palsekar ji. And Gautam's essential teaching is how to get peace of mind in daily living. So it's very centric to everyday life. It is, the whole focus is where you live the teaching. I have benefited greatly by, association with Gautam, and I'm very grateful. And over the years, as Gautam says in most of his talks, when you look back is when you really see, the changes that happen. So I had requested Gautam to speak on the higher teachings of Sai Baba to give devotees a deeper understanding of what Baba meant, because Baba's essential teaching also is so that it translates to day-to-day life. So in this interview, I'll ask Gautam a few questions around the aspects of the daily living where Sai Baba's devotees can imbibe the teachings and live that and attain peace and move towards what Baba would say, that I will give devotees what they want in the hope that they will want what I want to give them, which is self-realization and peace of mind and equanimity in day-to-day living. So Gautam, essentially the journey for most devotees, especially with Sai Baba and this path, typically begins with people getting drawn to Baba because of a miracle or dream, or vision, and he pulls them towards him. And that's essentially the common thread with most devotees. And then it is followed up by, a series of more miracles, and they are drawn to Shirdi, his life teachings. But somewhere down the line, I've noticed, and many people even write to me through the channel, that their faith and their surrender is very dependent on circumstances which are either favorable or when Baba does things in accordance to their will. And in one of your talks, you had mentioned about true faith. Could we begin by you shedding some light on that?
Sure. Nick, first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk on Shirdi Sai Baba's teachings. As you rightly said, there is so much material out there simply because of the miracles which Baba performed in his lifetime. As a ray of the Absolute, anything was possible in his sphere, in his domain. However, when I read the Sai Satcharita, for me it was the message behind the miracles which would impact one's daily living. I started reading it through that prism. So one level was the actual event of the miracle taking place, and the other was what is being conveyed through that story, which I found to directly impact daily living. So because I was with a teacher for almost 10 years, I started viewing Sai Baba's Satcharita through this prism of what you could call as Advaita or non-duality, as it is called in the Western world. And I found that it was so practical, so pragmatic, but it was hidden, so to speak, because of the overwhelming evidence of miracles. So when I read the Satcharita, I started underlining these expressions of Advaita, of what Baba has said, which really appealed to me because I feel that it is everybody's life experience and it is just a matter of focus and tapping into that. And he does deliver the greatest miracle of all, which I feel is peace of mind. People ask me about masters performing siddhis. And there's this whole another layer of thought which says that don't get stuck on the level of siddhis because they are mere experiences. Even Nisargadatta Maharaj in his younger days used to perform certain siddhis for his devotees. But his guru, Siddharameshwar Maharaj, said, look, don't get stuck at that level. You have to give them the message of Advaita. And truly, peace of mind is the biggest miracle, which is what Sai Baba gives through his teaching. Because that becomes a way of living, a way of being, and a way of looking at the world around you and yourself. So it is seeing that through the stories and understanding the core message of such a divine being whose very presence was, he was venerated by Hindus as well as Muslims. That sheer fact itself shows he was non-denominational. He was a guru to everyone. And it begins from there. The teaching itself begins from his own life.
Where people can learn from his example.
Yes.
So, there are people who constantly write this, that we've had a vision, we've had some sort of an experience. How do we understand what Baba is trying to convey? And this is a common concern for many people, that how do I interpret this? How do I relate to it? Or what is Baba trying to tell me? So what would you say to devotees who have this?
So as you rightly said, that this itself, the sheer fact they've had a dream or vision, is not of their doing. It has happened. That is how Baba has pulled them to him. Now they have to trust that force which has pulled them without their volition, without their free will, to do its job. What happens is we tend to analyze and seek meaning of what we have seen or what we have experienced. But that force is so potent, so powerful, that if it had the ability to come to us without our knowledge and pull us in, we must trust it to take us all the way. So actually I do find that one gets the answers if one has such a vision, for example, or dream or whatever it may be. One gets the answers once the thinking mind is not too caught up that I had this vision, I had the experience. You see, because the me feels great that God has chosen me to have a vision versus someone else.
It can strengthen the ego.
Exactly.
Yes.
But to have the humility that this vision happened without me doing anything is to trust that source which will show you the way. You see, like my teacher would say, never consider your glass half empty but half full, because if God has brought you this far in your spiritual journey, why do you feel He'll drop you here? He will hold your hand and take you home. So these are visions, these are signs, not for the me to feel proud about them, but to see that life is taking a certain course through the form of Baba, and one has to trust Baba to lead us along the way.
I had a question on this. As one goes down the path of trust and surrender, there are certain practices Baba would advocate to devotees of japa, of dhyana, of even self-inquiry at times. Devotees that are sincerely committed to Baba and wish to go down the path of self-realization, could you talk a little bit on practices for devotees where they can adhere to these, and if they can help still the mind, or if you could give some suggestions here?
See, generally masters like Baba saw the aptitude of the devotee and then prescribed what they felt was the right method for that specific devotee. Some were more inclined to bhakti, some to japa, and some to self-inquiry, and others to a total understanding of what Baba was saying, depending on the aptitude. For example, someone with a very active mind. The purpose of a mantra jap, the word mantra itself, man means mind and tra means freeing the mind. So rather than the mind being involved in mundane issues, it shifts to the mantra. So it creates a disturbance in the regular pattern of thinking which one is embroiled in. So that is again a step in the direction away from the mundane. So someone may not have the aptitude to practice self-inquiry or understand certain other messages of Baba, but may find, yes, I am very comfortable doing the japa. You see? So these were different practices prescribed, and what people resonate with the most is what would be given, and they would all lead to the source. Now let's say Baba would tell someone, and it is in the Satcharita, that see me in all the beings. Now someone may find that too abstract, but someone else might say, yes, what Baba is pointing to is that the same consciousness functions through everyone. The same sense of presence of being functions through all the people. That may be easy for that particular individual to understand that. Now that person need not do the japa then, because his life becomes the living teaching. He sees God in everyone. So that is what it was meant by different practices for different temperaments and attitudes. It is not that one has to progress from one to the other in a sequential form. Even Nisargadatta Maharaj would see the mindset of the person who has come to him and then decide whether his Jnana Yoga talks were the main thing or whether they should just do a mantra jap. So that is what the master does.
This takes me to a question, Gautam, that now Baba is not in form, and people who regard Sai Baba as their main guru, how do they get guidance which is specific to them so they know they are on the right track?
See, generally the guidance will come. The point is that we have to be open to receive the guidance. Now there are some instances which everyone is familiar with where Baba actually comes to certain people and then now they are spreading Baba's message. That is one kind of. The others are the simpler people who don't have that connection, But Baba being present in their life will bring about circumstances. The question is, are we aware? Or is our vision only on one track? You see, it is when we drop this one track vision, which is just our conditioning through which we are viewing everything, and when we are open and aware, then the source as represented by Baba is bound to step in to show us the way. But it could be that we get so stuck on this fact that no, Baba will show me the way, Baba will show me the way. But Baba is showing you the way, but through some other form. Through something which happens in your life again, which is coming as a gift. But we might just be so unaware of that because we have this fixed concept in our mind that it should come to us in a certain way. That we miss the opportunity.
There are many devotees who have experiences because Baba would give them, So to distinguish between a real experience and an imaginary one.
See, a real experience is an experience which comes. An imaginary one, in the sense you might be referring to, is one which I make myself believe is an experience. You see? So there's a very thin line, and that is why this whole business of experiences is very tricky, because as masters like Ramana Maharshi or even Shirdi Sai Baba himself has said, all experiences come and go. Baba himself has said, you are the witness of whatever transpires, which means in life all pleasures and pains which come and go in life, all experiences, because for an experience to be registered, one experiencer has to be there. You saw, all experiences come and go. And Baba himself has pointed to this in Satcharita about being the witness. You see, so the mind is such that it tends to hook on to an experience and feel special about that experience and then want to repeat that experience. Now that experience may or may not come again, and then one can get frustrated that, oh, Baba came to me once in a dream, now I'm going to wait for him to come another time. But the bedrock of your life should be Baba's teaching. It should not be dependent on an experience of Baba. Otherwise, what is the point of a teaching if it doesn't impact your daily living? What is the point if it is stuck at the level of one experience you had? The value of the experience is tremendous because it's like a catalyst. But many of us tend to get stuck on the level of that experience.
This takes me to the next question, Gautam. Sai Baba would often advocate the practice of self-inquiry, and he would often say, ask yourself at all times, who am I? And this would relate very much to this, at least that practice can help. Could you talk a little bit on the practice in general and give some guidance?
Sure. So self-inquiry is also there in our scriptures, and also after Baba, sages like Ramana Maharshi, who was known for his process of who am I? You see, now this again will appeal to a certain aptitude and a certain mindset. It's not everyone's cup of tea. But what Baba is pointing to, or this inquiry of who am I is pointing to, is to understand that who is this me who feels he or she is living his or her life? Who is this me? Who is this person thinking this thought? And when this inquiry of who am I is done, the understanding starts sinking in that I am not this, I am not this. Why? Because I am the one aware of this. Who is the one who is aware of this? This is a regression, because who am I cannot have an answer in that sense, because you are no thing. Who am I is to dissolve the constructs which we have created, which separate us from what is and from the world. This me with its baggage of likes, dislikes, conditionings, feelings, emotions. It is to deconstruct this shell which we have created around us since childhood and take us back to that pure being, the pure source, like the child. Before the ego came and conditioned the child that you are separate and I am separate. So this is what the inquiry of who am I does. And someone who can go deep into this inquiry will realize this unicity, because the riddle has been solved of who am I. So again, it is a practice, just like japa is a practice.
Gautam, it seems that it's important for a devotee to be able to discriminate in their day-to-day life as well. Sai Baba would say in one of the 10 prerequisites for self-realization for a devotee that they must choose the right over the pleasant. And even Bhagwan Ramakrishna Dev would make a clear distinction on worldliness and the path of God. And it seems that discrimination could be that fork or the starting point where devotee begins like to witness and be aware. Could you speak a little bit about discrimination as a practice and how devotees could essentially imbibe that into their day-to-day lives?
See, there are many aspects of discrimination, but if we just touch upon one, so many of us, in fact, most of us, are so hardwired with conditioning that based on our past experience, we react to different people the same way. We are in a reactionary mode rather than a response mode because we have been hardwired with conditioning. Now, in this case, what is discrimination? Discrimination is to understand that we are a result of our conditioning and so is the other. That itself is a level of discrimination because you are no longer functioning on a kind of autopilot of reaction. With the understanding that the same consciousness functions through each of us, as Baba has said, what happens is one accepts the others for who they are because God has made them. And one accepts oneself for who one is because God has made one. This kind of thinking is discrimination. Because earlier, while one was going around pointing fingers, accusing and blaming and condemning people, now one understands that that is not true. That understanding is discrimination. This is just to give you one example because it's a very wide term. So one sees that when one follows the teaching, then discrimination starts happening. And every aspect of life, every aspect of relationships, all different relationships are seen in the light of discrimination.
You know, what you shared was discrimination in relationship to other people and events that are associated with them. Could we talk in terms of discrimination based on choices one makes, which need not have much to do with people, but more in regard to everyday circumstances and choices one makes, essentially in the light of, for the devotee who's putting God first in his life, the one who essentially is a serious aspirant and would make certain choices which are favorable to the path than which are not. So discrimination in that regard. So for example, if there is a choice that would trigger lust or peace, or something where he could get mired into something and get astray, as opposed to staying on the path, discriminating at these everyday decisions. Could you talk a little bit about that discrimination?
So let's take desire, for example, as a point, right? Now, desire can arise. To suppress desire is not the way, okay? To indulge in desire is not the way. This is what the sages have mentioned, right? What happens with discrimination is if desire arises, the understanding arises at the same time that the desire has arisen, but whether it gets fulfilled or not is God's will. So the involvement in the desire drops. That is how a desire arising is witnessed. It could be something as simple as a desire for a cup of coffee. That's also a desire, right? But for some reason the coffee powder is not at home, etc. What do we tend to do? We tend to blame that why didn't you buy the groceries in time? Why isn't it stock? Now I wanted to have a coffee, now I can't have it. And we bring out all this frustration on this event, right? But if the understanding is there that the desire to have a coffee arose, which is fine, but it didn't get fulfilled because it was not meant to, then the hold which the desire has on us loses its grip. I've used a very soft desire like a cup of coffee, but it would be applicable for any desire, like lust, as you said, you see. So to allow what has to come up, because suppressing it is not going to work, but also to let go of it and let go of the outcome, because the outcome is me wanting an outcome, me wanting things to be a certain way and getting frustrated if they are not that way. So the discrimination in this case is this: allowing what has to come up, but understanding that it will get fulfilled only if it is meant to. So there is no frustration. The other thing is, in right thinking, discrimination is, does my desire harm anyone? You see? And if the answer is no, and the understanding is there that it is desire in the moment, there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we are so consumed by our desires that we don't even realize it could be harmful to someone else or ourselves, because we are involved in the desire. You see, so it could also be seen as a gradual progression on our own spiritual journey, because everything in life, I keep pointing to this fact that Baba said, be a witness, let the world go topsy-turvy around you, but be a witness. Because that is a very deep teaching in that one line. You see, and let the world go topsy-turvy does not mean just external events, because the world is inside you.
Yeah, he would even say this, the Bhagavad Gita and the Kurukshetra is
inside.
Yeah.
See, it's very simply put. Right now you are appearing outside me, but the fact is you are in my field of consciousness. It is because I am conscious that everything is appearing within that consciousness, including myself and you. But are you outside me or are you within me? It appears I'm speaking to you, but this voice which you are hearing now is being heard in your own consciousness. That is the Maya. But we have lost so much of this because this sense of separation is so strong, which we have grown up in. The me and the other have become me versus the other. What was a simple structure in life of duality, which is what life is, black and white, big and small, up and down, rich and poor, front and back, which is the design of duality, has become dualism. The me and the other, the polaric opposites of duality, have become me versus the other. You see, so to understand this and to understand Baba's meaning when he mentions these excerpts and says these things, then one has to live by that.
Absolutely. You know, in this regard, I've had a common string of emails with the same theme come in, where people say they are living in, at least they think they are living in accordance with Baba's principles, where they say Baba has said, do your worldly duties and keep your mind on me. But they go about leading a life which is pretty much immoral, not in alignment with Baba's teachings. And sometimes it's abused. So, you know, if you could shed some light on that, you know, citing some examples like this so people can relate to it, that, you know, Baba had a much deeper meaning when he said, you know, you keep your mind on me and you do your duties in the world. At least to my understanding, it would be, you know, duties that you're meant to do, natural, as you said, not harming anyone else, doing what you're meant to do or made to do. But, you know, the emphasis for the devotee has to go withinward and even question whether they are living in alignment with Baba's teachings. So could you shed some light on that as well?
So see, sometimes it's not the time. Sometimes it's not the time for the teaching to sink in. It is not that they have a choice as such, because the level of understanding or awareness is at a certain level. So one can't say that they are voluntarily not following the teaching, but the teaching has not sunk in yet. Because how can you, for example, harbor a desire which harms another, if you truly were living Baba's teaching, it would just not be possible, right? So this is where, words like earnestness and sincerity, which all masters point to, be earnest in your practice, be sincere in your practice. What happens is we segment our life, we segment our day. For example, we have a great 1-hour puja ritual with Baba in the temple where we are full of bhakti and devotion, right? But the rest of the day, we are having fights with everyone. We don't get along with people. Now, if Baba has said, see me in all beings, what is true bhakti? True bhakti is to see God in everyone. What can be higher bhakti than that? So then bhakti is not just me merging with the idol at home and doing its puja and pranams, but actually living bhakti. So that comes because when one is immersed in a teaching and a master, that comes. The question is, when does it come? It is only a level of awareness which can, so to speak, speed up the process. But if it is not meant to happen, it won't. But a true bhakt of Shirdi Sai Baba or any master is one who follows the master's teaching and whose every breath, pran shakti, life force, is dedicated to the master and the teaching. Because they are not two. The form is of the formless. They are not two. What tends to happen is we tend to look at the master only as a form. We venerate only the form, but then there's a disconnect between that and the rest of our lives. You see, because the same form is within as well. The Guru is actually a projection of one's higher self onto a form. So that is also not separate from us. But we are so stuck in this world of forms and objects that everything is viewed compartmentalized. Now, it's as simple as saying the sun is not apart from you. If the sun rises and sets in the sky, this is all appearing in your own consciousness. That is how vast you are. That is how vast consciousness is, that the sun rises and sets in a vaster sky. But where? Within one's own consciousness. Which is, again, you'll find this, Baba pointing to this in the Satcharita.
I had a question on following up to this, where Gautam, as people spend more and more time with Baba or whichever path they are on, could you give some general guidelines and pointers for them to know if they are on the right track, they are making progress, almost like signposts which they can self-reflect on and see?
You see, here I recall Ramana Maharshi's teaching, because let's take this another way. He was asked that how do I know that a guru is a guru, or that so and so is my guru? And he gave a very simple answer: by the sense of peace you feel in his presence and the degree of respect you feel for him. Now you see, this word peace is very important, because that sense of peace which you feel is within you, and if you are true devotee or true disciple, that would be imbued and imbibed by you. The point I'm trying to make is that your own life and what happens in your life will be an indication to you how close you are to the Master's teaching. How? By the degree of peace you feel in your life, by your sense of respect you feel towards others, by accepting people for who they are, then you know your reactions in daily living to events that happen in your life, whether you accept them or revolt against them all the time, to people who appear in your life, whether you're always criticizing people, always condemning people. Someone was criticizing another guru, to Nisargadatta Maharaj, and he told that man to shut up. He said to criticize anything or anyone is to criticize the affairs of Brahman. So what happens is, to know the impact of the teaching is to see how it has impacted your own life, your daily living, your tolerance for people, your compassion for people. See, because we are not living in caves, we are living in a society, we are dealing with people. As Baba kept pointing out, all relationships are in anubandhana, cosmic debt of a relationship. That is why he would keep emphasizing that even if a beggar comes to you, don't give money, but don't shout and bark at the beggar as if it's a dog. It is on account of Rinanubandhan that we have come together. Now, so are we living that? Now, when one sees that after being exposed to Baba's teaching, after living the teaching, I find a general sense of harmony with people, which does not mean I have to love everyone. There may be people I don't like, but I have the understanding that they are who they are, the way they have been made. And I naturally prefer company of others to them, but I accept who they are. So one will see that one's own life has transformed and changed as a result of the message of the Master. And then one knows that yes, one is living the teaching. And one's whole life, from the time you get up to the time you go to sleep, becomes a meditation on a teaching. You see, we think of meditation as a practice. We have to sit for half an hour, concentrate, close our eyes. No. My Guru said, true meditation is witnessing whatever arises in life as movements in consciousness. Whatever it may be, pleasure and pain, comes and goes. It is witnessed, as Baba says. So the ground for meditation is life, and it becomes a way of being. Peace, equanimity, compassion are its characteristics. No blame, condemnation, hatred, malice, jealousy, envy. Because Baba says, I am the sole doer. Nobody is the doer. The Lord is the doer. So if I do something because of which society has praised me, whereas pride and arrogance may have arisen earlier, wow, I did something. Now the full humility and understanding is there that God gifted me a set of attributes as a result of which something was done, and so it was appreciated by society. What arises may be pleasure because it feels good, but no pride and arrogance. These start dropping away. Hatred and malice start dropping away. So all this is what one starts shedding.
Sometimes if one experiences this, maybe in lesser degrees, and one is sort of pulled astray temporarily, sometimes people have a tendency to be very hard on themselves, that, oh, I've been doing meditation or I've been with Baba for so long, yet I had an episode of anger or an outburst or something else, whatever it is for them. Could you shed some light in those moments how to be?
Yes, see, the thing is, we are not sages. It is human nature. One may have a practice for years and suddenly one incident happens which disturbs one's peace of mind. It's a happening. What happens is we take ownership of that and said, I was not disturbed for all these years. I got disturbed with this happening. Why did I do it? The fact is you didn't. It happened in the moment. So then, with this understanding, you don't set up these expectations that you have to be the perfect figure which will not make a wrong move and which will not say anything slightly wrong. That's a lot of pressure, because we are not perfect. God has made us with all our imperfections. In that sense, we are perfect because our imperfections are also made by God. So when we stop putting this demand on others as well as ourselves, that this is the way you should be and this is the way I should be, then life becomes free, joyful living. Things may happen sometimes because we are human, but we are not claiming ownership of them. Because to claim ownership is then to get stuck again.
Something that I should have asked you right in the beginning. Your relationship with Sai Baba, I remember you had mentioned once, right when you were a child, you were taken to Baba in Shirdi.
Yes.
So if you could share a little personal, a few personal encounters, interactions, your own experiences of Baba.
See, I have not had many experiences. I know he did come to me once in a dream recently, but what I do know is that when I was born, my father especially considered me a gift from Shirdi Sai Baba. And I have this memory, I think I must have been really small, maybe 2 years old, but the memory is very clear, 2 or 3 at the most, where I'm taken to Shirdi. They had taken me, and that at that time the temple priest who's on the podium was taking the babies, whoever had come with babies, and lifting the baby up and putting the baby at the feet of Baba and then giving the baby back to the parents. This I recall vividly because the visual imprint, I can actually even now see the vision of, being lifted off my parents and then the statue and being put at the feet and then being taken back. That memory I do have still. But beyond that, I just feel that, for a lot of people in India and Maharashtra especially, we have grown up seeing Sai Baba in taxis on the temple side. He has truly become a part of us. Plus, in my journey with spiritual masters, I kind of picked up on what they call are the esoteric aspects. Like, for example, I was very drawn to the Nath yogis, like Gorakhnath, etc. And they revered, of course, Dattatreya, And there's a connection between Sai Baba and Dattatreya. They consider him a manifestation of Dattatreya. And that is why he's even called Sai Nath. Sai Nath. He has a dhuni. The sign of the Naths is the fire, the dhuni. Once a Nath yogi told me that you must, wherever you go, if there's a dhuni of a Nath yogi, you must present yourself before that. So I asked him why. So he said because the dhuni records everything which transpires around it since it was lit. So I picked up these kind of cues along the way, and with Sai Baba, because he's so all-pervasive, one kept finding these connections and stories and understanding aspects of him as a truly divine being. Now, just the other day, I was telling my mother that we are planning to have this talk on interview, and she told me, did I tell you about my episode at Shirdi Sai Baba temple? So I said, which one? So she said about the trunk of Baba. So I said, no. I said, what is this? So she said what happened was, many years ago, she had gone with a friend of hers at Aarti time. She was just looking at the statue. Now my mother has been gifted with a spiritual awakening much later, I think, and she's had a lot of visions and all. But at that time, she thought that she saw a trunk on the murti, and she dismissed it because she felt with the the incense sticks and the dhoop and the lights of the flames and all, sometimes the mind is tricked into creating patterns where none actually exist. But she said this kept insisting, this vision kept insisting on being recognized by her. So she would wait to see like the smoke move away and the priest put the aarti thing down, but it was very clearly a trunk. So it was very perplexing for her. So then they stepped out, and there were few shops at that time. Her friend wanted to buy a murti and all that. And she said right in the corner, one small photo was leaping out saying, "Pick me, pick me." So she was wondering what that is. And so she told the shopkeeper, and he picked it out. He said, "Ye ji to Sai Ganesh hai." And it's of Ganesh, Sai Baba with a trunk. This my mother told me 3 days ago. She had completely not told this to me. Now I was wondering, I said, this is quite something. She didn't buy that photo. So I went on to Google and I just typed Sai Ganesh and I clicked images, and there are images of Baba with a trunk. So you see, all these are very symbolic. Supposing we went to a shop, one could very well say these buggers, they put one god's face on Sai Baba and do what they want and venerate him. But now this is what my mother has seen. So that was her experience. I think it was very beautiful because there is actually a form called Sai Ganesh. So that's something which
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
Symbolism, I think Baba is I would use the word cryptic. A lot of his messages, his ways, his leelas were not very direct. He would use symbolism, which till date in people's dreams, visions. Any reason?
Because he wants us to discriminate. He doesn't want to give us A for apple.
That's true.
Yeah.
One other question. Sai Baba is probably the most popular deity in India and pretty much many parts of the world, especially where Indians are. Any reason why in the West, the teachings haven't spread as much as it has through the path of bhakti, but in the Gyan Marg or in the West, any reason you feel there's been a bit of a gap there?
You see, one is that, as you rightly said, it is people of a simpler mindset. Now, Indians are bhakti prone because the tradition is to revere, to visit temples and the relationship with the murti or one's guru, for example. It is a bhakti driven path. The Western mind is more into inquiry and knowledge and thinking. Now, there's very little literature on what Baba has said on Jnana Yoga, for example. But his leelas all point to that. Now, even the story of the two lizards, where he's sitting and someone sees a lizard on the wall and says, "This lizard is getting very excited. Why?" And Baba says, "Its sister is coming." And a man the next instant comes in his cart and puts a sack down, and another lizard runs from the cart and goes and meets this lizard. Now, at one level, we say, look at Baba's Leela. He knew that another lizard was going to come from some other town. He had that vision, which he did, and he saw this happen. Now, the process of Jnana Yoga would be, what is behind this? What is the meaning of this? Which is very clear. Baba is saying that anyone in your life you meet, Rinanubandhana, the universe will conspire to bring about circumstances to make you meet them. In this case, it was two lizards. That was his vision, his enormity. You see? So now what happens is, because the literature is mainly driven on these stories and incidents which evoke so much bhav and bhakti, because truly only God or the Absolute could do all this, the Westerners don't have much to look at unless they really delve deeper. And that is why, because my background is Jnana Yoga, I was with a master who belonged to a lineage of Jnana Yoga masters. When I read the Satcharita, I saw it through the prism of Jnana Yoga. And that is why I underlined all these things which appeal to me, because I truly felt that living this is the highest form of bhakti. Because they are not two paths, ultimately it's the same. So I do feel that in time to come, the Western world is going to get more familiar with this master. I'll give you one example. It's only recently that around Arunachala mountain, a shrine has come up dedicated to Shirdi Sai Baba, which was not there earlier. And I feel that Sai Baba's message is going to reach out far more than it has ever been in the years to come. That is why he said, my bones will speak from my tomb. Baba has said that the message will go far and wide. And he will come in any form, whether it is a vision, whether it is dreams, whether it is through Jnana Yoga, we don't know. But because as Ramana Maharshi had said, even Nisargadatta Maharaja had said very clearly, Baba was the absolute, always there. So I do feel that it would be really wonderful if devotees like us of Sai Baba live his teaching with a direct impact in our daily living. I think that is the service we could be of to Baba.
So that being said, Gautam, we pray for His grace, that His will be done.
Yeah.
And thank you once again so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you.
And hopefully this is one of many conversations with you. And thank you so much.
It would be my privilege. Thank you.